I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
Number 20, Andre Agassi.
Back in the 90s, he was a big tennis star, famous not just for winning Wimbledon and multiple Grand Slams, but also for his impressive mullet hairstyle. However, Agassi admitted in his autobiography Open, published in 2010, that this crazy hair was actually a wig he wore to hide the fact he was bald. Even worse, he said that he was so distracted thinking about what would happen if it fell off that he suffered an embarrassing defeat during his first ever Grand Slam final. Good thing he finally ditched it and came clean.
I had about 50 bobby pins holding it down, and I said to my brother, is this going to stay? It's my first Grand Slam finals. And he says, I think it will, just don't move around so much.
Number 19, Israel Keyes. A career criminal, Israel Keyes committed many serious felonies and killed at least 3 people between the mid-90s and early 2010s.
Yeah, a bit of a drive.
That was a 3-hour drive.
Where they were at.
Yeah, in all fairness, I never set up a specific day.
Keyes was arrested after killing a woman named Samantha Koenig and was extradited to Alaska, where the crime occurred. In Alaska, Keyes provided a detailed and graphic confession to law enforcement.
Back when I was smart, I would let them come to me.
Not only were the words horrible, but his behavior signified an uncomfortable air of menace. He calmly relayed some grotesque stories while eating a bagel and drinking coffee, like he didn't have a care in the world.
Not much to choose from in a manner of speaking, but there's also no witnesses, really.
The FBI special agent who interviewed Keyes later called his confession, quote, very chilling. And that's coming from a professional who hears these types of stories every day.
There is no one who knows me, or who has ever known me, who knows anything about me, really.
Number 18, Elizabeth Wettlaufer.
She went to work, she enjoyed her work, she was an RN.
Hailing from Ontario, Canada, Elizabeth Wettlaufer was one of the most active serial killers in the country's history between 2007 and 2016. While working as a nurse at long-term care homes, Wettlaufer murdered 8 senior citizens by injecting them with lethal doses of insulin. She made unsuccessful attempts on the lives of 6 others, but the intended victims survived as the insulin doses administered were insufficient.
You have a portion on the 4th page here, and it's titled People Who Didn't Die. What can you tell me about?
Surprisingly, the only reason Wettlaufer was caught was because she decided to come clean. Apparently seeking redemption, she committed herself to a Toronto psychiatric hospital and admitted her shocking crimes to the staff. They promptly notified the police, to whom Wettlaufer gave a more detailed confession.
And then that night I overdosed her. Because, like I said, I had that feeling that it was her time to go. And
what do you mean by that? Do you think she was towards the end of her life at that point?
No, that she was the person to go.
She was handed 8 concurrent life sentences.
It wasn't so much that I wanted her to die, it was more let's see what happens.
Number 17, Tiger Woods. The personal life of Tiger Woods came under intense scrutiny in 2009 when he became the subject of an infidelity scandal.
I said, "You're married." Nonchalantly, he said, "Yeah, I'm married." So he didn't make it as to be a big deal.
Rumors had already been circulating in the press about a possible affair when, on November 27th, Woods crashed his SUV while leaving home around 2:30 a.m., sparking numerous questions and suspicions. On December 2nd, he released a vague statement apologizing for unclear and unspecific, quote, transgressions.
Now, every one of you has good reason to be critical of me.
However, as the days went by, several women came forward claiming to have had relationships with Woods. It all proved too much for the golf star, and on December 11th, he finally confessed to being unfaithful.
I hurt my wife, my kids, my mother, my wife's family, my friends.
The debacle resulted in his divorce and significantly impacted his performance on the green, which he took years to overcome.
For all that I have done, I am so sorry.
Number 16, Naomi Shemer. Jerusalem of Gold is an important song in its native Israel, often regarded as an unofficial national anthem. Unfortunately, it also comes with some degree of controversy. For years, singer-songwriter Naomi Shemer was accused of plagiarizing the melody, but she repeatedly denied those allegations. That is, until she was dying of cancer and confessed to fellow musician Gil Aldema that she had in fact plagiarized the tune.
ירושלים של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור.
It came from an old lullaby called Peyo Hoshepe, which she heard at a concert in 1962. Shemer claimed to have unconsciously lifted the melody from memory, having loved it so much. However, she regretted it to the very end, even suggesting that the endless stress may have contributed to her fatal illness. Number 15, Edmund Kemper.
It started with surrogates at a non-human level. Physical objects, my possessions, other people's.
One of the most notorious American serial killers, Edmund Kemper murdered 10 people by the age of 24, including his own mother and grandparents. Kemper was imprisoned twice for these crimes, both as a result of his own confession. After killing his grandparents, he informed his mother, who instructed him to call the police. He then confessed that he, quote, just wanted to see what it felt like to kill grandma. Kemper was released on parole and resumed his murderous activities soon after.
And I sensed everybody in the world just stopping what they were doing, turning around, saw what I did, and are coming to get me. And I knew I was paranoid.
His spree, which resulted in the deaths of his mother and 7 others, came to an end when Kemper called the police to confess. When asked why he turned himself in, Kemper coldly explained that killing was, quote, a pure waste of time.
Now, would you get in the car with this man? Huh?
Number 14, Richard Kuklinski.
How many people have you killed?
Mystery continues to shroud Richard Kuklinski, an American career criminal who murdered at least 5 people.
More than 100.
For example, Kuklinski claims to have worked as a hitman for the mafia, but investigators have been unable to verify this. He also asserts that he killed up to 200 people, but only 5 deaths have officially been linked to him. Back in 1988, Kuklinski was found guilty of 4 murders and sentenced to life in prison.
Actually, it was just seeing if it would work.
What was he doing at the time?
Looking at me.
However, in 2001, during an interview for the HBO documentary The Iceman Confesses, Kuklinski dropped a bombshell, admitting to the 1980 killing of NYPD officer Peter Calabro. Prosecutors later corroborated this story, resulting in 30 more years being added to Kuklinski's sentence.
Did you think of yourself as an assassin?
Assassin. Sounds so exotic. I was just a murderer.
Number 13, Christian Sperling. Who the heck is Christian Sperling, you ask? Well, heard of a little creature called the Loch Ness Monster? Back in 1934, the famous surgeon's photograph was published in the Daily Mail, and while some had their doubts, it was long considered to be verifiable proof of the monster's existence. That is, until January 1991, when Christian Sperling confessed that it was all a hoax. He and his father-in-law, a man named M.A. Wetherell, had concocted the scheme along with Wetherell's son and an insurance agent named Morris Chambers. They made the monster's head out of wood putty and a toy submarine, and had the photo sold to the Daily Mail. And with that, the world of cryptozoology was never the same. Number 12, Dennis Nilsen. Between 1978 and 1983, Scottish serial killer Dennis Nilsen strangled at least 12 men, and mostly disposed of their remains by flushing them down the toilet.
And he just turned around and looked at me and he said, 15 or 16.
In February of 1983, residents in Nilsen's building complained of plumbing problems. Upon investigation, experts found bones and human flesh blocking the system, specifically in a pipe leading to the top flat, which belonged to Nilsen. When police entered his house, they immediately noticed the smell of decomposition. Nilsen played innocent at first, but after a cop told him to stop, quote, messing about, he came clean and admitted there was a body in the wardrobe. With that startling confession, Dennis Nilsen's crime spree came to an abrupt end. Number 11, Aileen Wuornos.
So I have to come clean and tell the world the lies that went on through my mouth.
Arguably the most infamous female serial killer, Aileen Wuornos was active in Florida for just 1 year, between 1989 and 1990. In that time, She engaged in sex work and killed 7 male clients before robbing them of their cash. There's a slight misconception of Wuornos as a sympathetic victim due to her traumatic upbringing, her claims of self-defense, and her portrayal in Monster, which her real-life acquaintances have criticized. In reality, Wuornos met the professional criteria for psychopathy, and she openly confessed to being a cold-blooded killer.
First-degree murder and robbery. As they said, they had it right. A serial killer.
While in court, Wuornos declared, quote, "I am guilty as can be. I want the world to know I killed these men, as cold as ice."
There's no self-defense. I'm really sorry what happened about everything. I was in this, to me, this world is nothing but evil.
Number 10, Ted Bundy. One of the world's most evil serial killers, upon his arrest in the mid-70s, he denied every count of assault, murder, and kidnapping brought against him.
My chance to talk to the press. Contrary to Section 78204 Florida statute, I'll plead not guilty right now.
It was only until immediately before his execution on January 24, 1989, that he finally admitted to his crimes. In the weeks and months preceding the execution, he finally confessed to the crimes he was accused of in great detail.
Bundy also admitted to revisiting the locations where he buried some of his victims' remains, and even owned up to crimes that the police didn't know about.
How deep was the grave?
Approximately 3 feet, 2 to 3 feet deep.
Despite this, Bundy's actual death toll could be much higher than we think. Number 9, Julian Altman. Some of the most valuable and revered musical instruments in the world are Stradivarius violins, antiques built in Italy hundreds of years ago. One in particular from 1713, currently known as the Gibson X Huberman Stradivarius, was stolen from a virtuoso called Bronisław Huberman in 1936 by struggling musician Julian Altman. For half a century, it remained lost, until on his deathbed, Altman confessed to his wife that he was in possession of the violin, telling her where to find it. His information proved true, and she received a $263,000 finder's fee. It was last sold to violinist Joshua Bell for almost $4 million.
It's a notorious instrument that I already knew about, so I played a few notes on it, and that was it. I was hooked.
Number 8, Margaret Gibson. In 1922, Hollywood director William Desmond Taylor was shot dead in his Los Angeles bungalow, a crime that went unsolved until 1964 when retired actress Margaret Gibson confessed to murder. Following a heart attack, Gibson knew she was about to die and told one of her neighbors that she had been the one to kill Taylor all those years ago. Police can neither prove nor disprove this admission, and while it doesn't conflict with the information they know about Taylor's murder, all of the police files relating to it had mysteriously vanished by the 1940s. Though Gibson did once become hysterical after seeing a piece about Taylor's unsolved murder on TV.
Number 7, Naaman Diller's widow. In 1983, one of the most successful art heists in history was pulled off. At the time, police had few to no leads about who stole a collection of antique timepieces from the L.A. Meyer Institute for Islamic Art in Jerusalem. One of these pieces was owned by Marie Antoinette, the last queen of France, and was worth an estimated $30 million. Then in 2008, Naomi Shemer, the widow of notorious Israeli art thief Naaman Diller, was arrested after many of the stolen timepieces were found in her possession. Shemer told police that Diller had confessed to her 4 years earlier on his deathbed and revealed the location of the stolen assets. She was only caught after she attempted to sell the pieces. Number 6, Carolyn Bryant. An icon of black civil rights, Emmett Till was visiting family in Mississippi when he was lynched after being accused of inappropriately flirting with a white woman named Carolyn Bryant. Bryant's husband, Roy Bryant, and his half-brother, J.W. Milam, kidnapped Till, killed him, and threw his body in the Tallahatchie River. An all-white jury acquitted Bryant and Milam of all charges. Shockingly, both men later profited by selling their confession to Look magazine for the modern-day equivalent of $43,000. The story sadly gets worse. In 2017, an historian named Timothy Tyson alleged that Carolyn Bryant had admitted to fabricating her accusation in a previous interview with him. If true, that would mean that the entire tragedy began over a monumental lie.
If they reopen the case because of the warrant, that somehow bits and pieces of the historical record might come together and tell us something more clear.
Number 5, James Brewer. Upon suffering a severe stroke in 2009, James Brewer was convinced he was going to die. As a result, he called the police in Tennessee with a shocking confession. Brewer admitted to fatally shooting Jimmy Carroll in 1977 because he thought Carroll was trying to steal his wife Dorothy. As it turned out, Brewer had actually been arrested in Tennessee shortly after the murder, but he escaped on bail and fled to Oklahoma, where he began living under a different name. But it appears the hands of justice were not quite ready to let him go. Following his confession, Brewer recovered from his stroke, after which he was arrested and charged with Carol's murder.
Number 4, Robert Durst. In 2015, HBO was making a 6-part documentary series called The Jinx about the murders Durst was accused of.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And it's 5 after 4. Perfect timing.
The series ended with an apparent confession as he talks to himself while in the bathroom, unaware that his body mic was still switched on.
Killed them all. Of course.
It recorded a confession where he literally says he, quote, killed them all. But there is some debate over whether or not this is admissible in court. On the one hand, he was aware of the microphone, while on the other, it was a spontaneous admission.
To make matters even more complicated, he was also allegedly taking an illicit substance at the time of the interview.
Number 3, Lance Armstrong. He's now one of the most famous dope fiends in sporting history, but there was a time when his confession to using performance-enhancing drugs shook the world.
Armstrong winning the Tour de France 7 times consecutively aroused suspicions, and he finally admitted to what he was being accused of in a televised interview with Oprah.
Yes or no? In all 7 of your Tour de France victories, did you ever take banned substances or blood dope?
Yes.
The widely celebrated athlete had taken various cocktails of drugs to improve his cycling. Armstrong was completely unapologetic and even blamed the doping scandal on the cancer he had survived. In the interview, he told Oprah that after becoming so ill and then making a miraculous comeback, he just, quote, got carried away.
Number 2, Bill Clinton. On the 26th of January 1998, the president famously declared that he, quote,
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
The woman in question was Monica Lewinsky, who worked as an intern at the White House before being relocated when she spent too much time with him.
He went on to repeatedly deny the allegations for 7 months, even perjuring himself in court, before finally admitting that he did have, quote, a relationship with Ms. Lewinsky that was not appropriate.
It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part, for which I am solely and completely responsible.
The sex scandal was so huge, there were even attempts to have Clinton impeached, but he was ultimately acquitted of all charges and remained in office for 2 more years. Number 1, Jeffrey Dahmer. The Milwaukee Monster's reign of terror finally came to an end when he was arrested on July 23, 1991.
That night, an intended victim of Dahmer's escaped and led the police to his apartment, wherein they found several human remains, as well as numerous disturbing pictures.
And I acted on my fantasies, and that's where everything went wrong.
Over 60 hours of police interviews, Dahmer confessed to the murder of more than 17 men and boys over the course of 13 years.
Once I saw that I had no choice but to face it, I decided to face it head on and make a full confession.
Dahmer's confession was nearly 250 pages long, and he ultimately met his end at the hands of a fellow prison inmate in 1994.
I knew I was sick or evil or both. Now I believe I was sick.
What do you think is the most shocking confession in history? Be sure to let us know in the comments.
It's hard to admit that I need help, but I do.